this year, drones in the air to make sure everyone here stays safe. And every single person in Times Square has gone through multiple layers of security. There are over 1 million revelers here getting ready to ring in 2020. Many people have been standing on their feet for hours. Some even arrived in the early hours of the morning. We spoke to two brothers. They road trip from North Carolina. They've been standing in the pens since 1 a.m. And once you're there, you cannot leave to go to the bathroom or to get food, or you won't be allowed back in. You'll completely lose your spot. But of course, the big star of the show is the ball that will drop at midnight. It's 12 feet in diameter and almost 15,000 pounds. And as soon as that ball drops, the NYPD will start preparing for next year to bring in 2021. Live at the Marriott Marquis in New York City, Hillary Lane. Elaine, over to you.
Hillary Lane, thank you. It's already the new year for many people around the world. Let's take a look at how they celebrated. Impeachment capped a year that brought acts of devastating gun violence, but also celebrations of patriotic anniversaries that brought Americans together. We're looking back at the pivotal people and moments that helped shape 2019.
No collusion, no obstruction.
President Trump and his supporters say Democrats, they've gone too far with claims of wrongdoing after Robert Mueller found the president did not collude with Russia.
This is pretty much as good as a not guilty verdict. While the Russia investigation is over, the president's legal problems continue.
I had a perfect phone call, a totally perfect phone call.
President Trump was accused of withholding military aid to Ukraine in exchange for Ukraine investigating the Democrats.
Was there a quid pro quo? The answer is yes.
We passed the 2 articles of impeachment. The president is impeached.
And I did say, I think this is all going to blow up, and here we are.
Democrats take control of the House. The entire freshman class was sent here because Americans are sick of how Washington works.
Are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Sharp divisions among the Democratic presidential hopefuls.
Houston, we have a problem.
Candidates are trying to make their mark at this crucial time in the race.
The single most important thing we have to accomplish is defeat Donald Trump.
American troops are pulling back to make way for Turkey's planned invasion of northern Syria.
It has been a tumultuous time.
It was like a 2-minute warning. We had to pack up and get moving because the situation on the ground was about to change dramatically and quickly.
A daring raid in Syria killed ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
We're closing the border. We'll keep it closed for a long time. I'm not playing games.
She says there is no way she can go back to her home country, that things are much more dangerous there.
Over 4,000 of the more than 10,000 children in the agency's care are at risk of remaining in custody long term.
Reports came out that they were living in horrible conditions.
You're saying this is not good enough.
I've been saying it for a year.
fired. Multiple shots fired.
AK, somebody's got shot.
Massacres in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, happened in startling proximity for a country too familiar with gun violence.
We need to love one another again. No children in any world should see things like that. They shouldn't.
You have the hate crime category, you have the church category, you have the school category. Bottom line is, dead is a category.
This is one of New Zealand's darkest days.
Never thought in my life I'd love to see something like this.
The Prime Minister vows to reform her country's gun laws in response to the worst mass shooting in the country's modern history.
51 lives were lost from our Muslim community, and then a question was asked, why does anyone need military-style semi-automatic weapons or assault rifles? So that's where we drew the line.
Hurricane Dorian ravages the Bahamas.
Everything you had, everything's gone, everything.
A humanitarian crisis in the making.
This is your whole life right here.
Everything gone one time.
One side of the 405 was turned into a towering inferno.
If you're still there, you're an idiot. Get the hell out.
Boeing faces safety questions after the second deadly crash of one of its new 737 MAX 8 jets.
We now have 346 tombstones.
This is not an accident. This is something that could have been prevented.
I would walk before I was to get on a 737 MAX.
Parliament came no closer to approving terms of its breakup with Europe.
It is a burning desire to get Brexit done.
China's central government is condemning protests in Hong Kong.
What started off as a peaceful protest has devolved. At times, it felt like a war zone.
We are fighting for freedom and survival.
Notre Dame stands damaged but defiant after a fire raged for at least 12 hours.
Notre Dame is not just a building, it's the beating heart of Paris.
I didn't do this stuff. This is not me, y'all. I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my life.
Robert.
Embattled singer R. Kelly is in custody for the second time this year on federal sex crime charges.
Now he isn't facing years. He's facing decades.
Jeffrey Epstein was charged with sex trafficking and conspiracy. The alleged sex ring may have involved dozens of underage girls. Were you afraid of him?
Yeah. I mean, he's dead, but I still am.
Epstein may be gone, but the demand for justice is intensifying.
You could not spend time around him and not know.
Lawyers want Prince Andrew to cooperate with investigators, keeping the prince in the spotlight even as he tries to step away from it.
As far as I was aware, they were staff.
He knows what happened. I know what happened, and there's only one of us telling the truth.
An explosive new HBO documentary. Wade Robson and James Safechuck claim Jackson abused them for years when they were young children.
Critics are calling it shocking, saying you'll never listen to Michael Jackson the same way again.
How can we provide comfort for other survivors? That's what this is about. And Michael just happens to be the abuser in this child sexual abuse story.
Lori, pay for my tuition!
Prosecutors accuse dozens of people, including 2 Hollywood stars, of paying millions to get their kids into top schools.
These were parents who were cutting the line illegally and taking their kids along for the ride.
The number of cases of severe lung illness possibly caused by vaping has surged. How do you sit here and sell it every day?
We have a product that does not present a risk.
The message to teens is clear. No device is safe for them to vape.
A young lady at my house right now, and she just says her name is Jamie Kloss.
13-year-old Jamie Kloss, who disappeared the day her parents were murdered, escaped from captivity, and she is safe. It's such an overwhelming, happy ending to such a horrible beginning.
Chewie, we're home.
Here's to the ones that we got. Cheers to the wish you were here, but you're not. Cause the drinks bring back all the memories of everything we've been through. Toast to the ones that... Take care of yourself, Jack. Toast to the ones that we lost on the way. Cause the drinks bring back all the memories. And the memories bring back your... There's a time that I remember when I did not know no pain.
You are blessed, so you can bless others. God bless. May God bless America.
I feel like December when somebody say your name. 'cause I can't reach out to call you, but I know I will one day.
What will be, will be.
Okay, here we are. Okay. Take a firm hold of the hypodermic needle. Right.
Can you say that? It's a shoehorn.
The rest don't matter. Yeah, the pain could peel, the glass could shatter. Let it rain, 'cause you and I remain the same. When there ain't a crack in the foundation, baby, I know when it's gone, when peace.
We're not playing last word.
No.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Bye.
No, don't do that. Goodbye.
Oh, yay! Fans of Britain's royal family around the world are celebrating, yes, we are, the newest addition to the family. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have a 7-pound, 3-ounce baby boy.
This little thing is absolutely to die for, so I'm just over the moon.
Liftoff on Apollo 11.
50 years ago, the Apollo 11 mission blasted off.
Half a century later, historians tend to agree it still stands as perhaps humanity's greatest achievement to date.
13, I remember that day very well.
I was 2.
It's a big...
Anthony Mason is in Normandy. He's leading our D-Day anniversary coverage.
I'm always struck by the gravity and enormity of what happened here. It's almost incomprehensible.
This is the first time I took Omaha Beach sand for 75 years.
How's it feel?
It feels damp and wet.
Yes, it does.
We're also reflecting on the end of a decade. CBS Sunday Morning's Lee Cowan takes a look back.
A lot happened during the decade now ending. Here are just a few of the biggest stories. In 2010, the Deepwater Horizon drilling platform exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 workers and spewing oil into the Gulf for months. 2011 saw the Navy SEALs raid that killed al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in Pakistan.
I want to thank every American who participated in this election.
Campaign 2012 ended with the re-election of President Barack Obama over Republican Mitt Romney. In 2013, a pair of bombs killed 3 people and injured more than 260 others at the Boston Marathon. The militant Islamic group ISIS proclaimed the creation of a caliphate in captured territory both in Iraq and Syria in 2014. In 2015, the Supreme Court granted same-sex couples the right to marry. 2016 was the year Donald Trump defied the polls and predictions to win election as president. Allegations of sexual abuse against movie mogul Harvey Weinstein back in 2017 ignited the Me Too movement. 2018 saw the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida that killed 17 and led to the Student March for Our Lives in Washington. As for 2019, the FAA grounded the Boeing 737 MAX passenger jet, while
we passed the 2 articles of impeachment. The president is impeached.
The resolution of the impeachment drive against President Trump awaits the new year.
It looks like 2020 is going to be a historic and busy year. The Senate impeachment trial against President Trump may begin as soon as January. The House has already voted in favor of 2 articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. At the same time, several Democrats are still running to replace President Trump. The first caucuses and primaries on the Democratic side are in early February. They will help determine the top of the ticket. The Democratic National Convention in July will formalize the party's nominee. He or she will then face off against Mr. Trump. Election Day on November 3rd will determine the next administration. But it won't just be a big year for domestic politics. Israel holds elections again in March. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson faces a January deadline for Brexit. Beyond politics, history could be made in the new year for other reasons. NASA has a planned mission to Mars to search for evidence of life and potentially habitable areas. The 2020 Summer Olympics will be in Tokyo in July. 2020 will also see some notable anniversaries. September marks 75 years since the official end of World War II. June is the 100th anniversary of women being granted the right to vote. And the Beatles released their Hey Jude album 50 years ago next March. Plus, 2020 is year 6 of your favorite streaming network, CBSN. Coming up, from protests in Hong Kong to a deadly volcanic explosion in New Zealand and more Brexit turmoil, we take a look back at the international stories that made headlines in 2019. Stay with us. You're streaming CBSN's special coverage of New Year's Eve as we count down to 2020. Over the course of 2019, a U.S. raid led to the death of the leader of ISIS. A fire tore through Notre Dame, and a royal sex scandal hit Britain. Ian Lee is in London with a look at the biggest international events of the year.
American forces dealt a major blow to ISIS in Syria. The group's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, killed himself when U.S. Special Forces raided his compound. The operation was moved up after President Trump initially ordered troops home from Syria, but then backtracked, leaving roughly 500 to protect the country's oil. The president made denuclearization of North Korea a top priority, but not even multiple summits, including crossing into North Korea, could charm the supreme leader into ending his nuclear weapons program. Tensions rose in the Persian Gulf, with the U.S. blaming Iran for attacking 4 ships and 2 Saudi oil refineries. Widespread protests rocked the country, partially as a result from stinging U.S. sanctions. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's days in office may be numbered after prosecutors indicted him for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Hong Kong also saw political turmoil after an extradition bill sparked months of violent unrest and calls for democratic reforms. Suicide bombers in Sri Lanka targeted churches and hotels in coordinated Easter Sunday attacks, killing more than 250 people. A convicted terrorist on early prison release went on a stabbing spree near London Bridge, killing 2 people. Bystanders tackled him to the ground before British police shot and killed him. A white supremacist opened fire at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, killing 51 people in the nation's deadliest attack that led to an overhaul of the country's gun laws. A volcano suddenly exploded on a popular tourist island in New Zealand, killing at least 18 people, including an American family. A fire tore through Notre Dame in Paris, destroying part of the famous cathedral. Donors pledged more than $1 billion to restore the landmark. Floodwaters swamped the historic Italian city of Venice, beaching gondolas and trashing hotels. The mayor blamed climate change for the highest tide in 50 years.
How dare you?
Climate activist Greta Thunberg chastised world leaders at the United Nations for not doing enough to stop climate change, inspiring millions around the world to stage protests. British authorities dragged WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange from Ecuador's embassy in London, where he was holed up for 7 years. The whistleblower is facing possible extradition to the U.S. for publishing thousands of classified government documents.
To get Brexit done.
A landslide election victory for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson broke years of Brexit deadlock in Parliament.
But at the time, I felt it was the honourable and right thing to do.
Britain's royal family did damage control after Prince Andrew talked publicly about his ties to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Congratulations. Thank you.
And Prince Harry and Meghan brought some joy to the royals when they welcomed their first child into the world. Ian Lee, CBS News, London.
During the past decade, Vladimir Putin was re-elected twice and will remain in office until at least 2024. But the world outside the Kremlin walls is a different place because of him. Mark Phillips reports.
Let's say you had nodded off for a long, if chilly, nap on the banks of the Moscow River 10 years ago. How different a world would you wake up to now? Within the Kremlin walls, not very different at all. Vladimir Putin was re-elected twice in this past decade and will be in office until 2024, at least. But the world outside those walls is a different place because of him. It's certainly different in the Crimea, the Ukrainian province he invaded and annexed in 2014. And it's tragic for the 298 people who died on the Malaysian Airlines plane shot down over Ukraine by a Russian missile. The opportunity to do a comprehensive, credible crash investigation may already have passed. And Putin's influence is felt well beyond Eastern Europe, particularly in the last U.S. presidential election, where he's accused of sanctioning an internet troll campaign against Hillary Clinton. Accused by just about everybody but the president.
They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
The American president's relationship with the Russian leader has seemed better than with old allies, says Pulitzer Prize-winning writer on European affairs Anne Applebaum.
Putin set out on a strategy that seems, on the face of it, incredible. He decided that what he wanted to do was break up the European Union, break up NATO, and get the United States to leave Europe. It's pretty clear that the U.S. president admires Putin in a way that he does not admire American allies.
If there was one picture that summed up the misery of the decade, it was this one. The body of Alan Kurdi, a 3-year-old Kurdish Syrian refugee, washed up on a Mediterranean beach. Hundreds of thousands fled endless wars in the Middle East and poverty in Africa. And when they made their way through Europe, they triggered an anti-immigrant backlash and the rise of populist leaders. Viktor Orban in Hungary, Matteo Salvini in Italy. Protection of borders was part of what drove the Brexit vote in Britain that is taking the UK out of the European Union. And if it was a hot decade in politics, real temperatures rose as well. The consequences of global warming, heat waves, droughts, flooding caused by melting in the polar regions will occur more often.
There are several spots around here, around Antarctica, that are believed to be in this irreversible situation.
All this no matter what the pleas of a schoolgirl who has become the unlikely face of a new international movement.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I'm 16 years old. I come from Sweden, and I want you to panic.
The last decade has had its diversions. An American actress, Meghan Markle, married into the British royal family and discovered there is no preparation for the kind of scrutiny that involves. But that napper by the Moscow River might be relieved to see that the Queen is still on the throne.
My lords, pray be seated.
In a world of change, some things stay the same.
2019 was a year of historic political events. Natalie Brand reports from Washington.
Article 2 is adopted.
The House of Representatives voted to impeach a president for only the third time in U.S. history. Democrats charged President Trump with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress after allegations he pressured the leader of Ukraine to announce an investigation into his political rivals.
There was no pressure. Was there a quid pro quo? The answer is yes.
Current and former administration officials testified the president held up military aid and a White House meeting from Ukraine.
Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy.
A long-awaited Inspector General's report on the FBI's Russia probe found no political bias while investigating the 2016 Trump campaign, but agents did make a number of errors.
The activities we found here don't vindicate anybody.
A federal jury found the president's longtime associate Roger Stone guilty on 7 charges, including witness tampering, stemming from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. In March, Mueller released his highly anticipated report on Russian interference in the 2016 election. It found no collusion, but outlined possible instances of obstruction.
No collusion, no obstruction. I won.
Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
President Trump sparred with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi throughout the year.
Go ahead,
What we witnessed on the part of the president was a meltdown.
And with a group of freshman House members, 4 women of color known as the Squad. But the House and the president were able to advance a new trade agreement with Canada and Mexico, even as the president and Congress clashed over the southern border, and conditions at migrant detention facilities came under the microscope.
We're better than that.
The resounding voice of Congressman Elijah Cummings fell silent in October after he succumbed to long-standing health issues. The Supreme Court blocked a controversial citizenship question from the 2020 census, but the High Court still has to weigh in on key cases that include LGBTQ workplace rights and the fate of young immigrants known as Dreamers.
You're so lucky I became your president.
Campaign 2020 revved up with President Trump seeking a second term. On the Democratic side, a crowded field of nearly 30 candidates has been cut in half. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg joined the race late, looking to catch the frontrunners, former Vice President Joe Biden, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg. They're preparing for primary season as the Senate prepares for an impeachment trial in the new year. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Washington.
It hasn't just been a turbulent year in Washington, but a decade of political change. As we count down to 2020, Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett looks back at the biggest political stories of the 2010s.
Article 2 is adopted.
President Donald Trump impeached. That's a mouthful all by itself, capping 10 years of political turbulence. The through line? Even after a recovery for the record books, the fallout of the Great Recession has left Americans questioning their economic security and government's place in their lives.
Health insurance reform becomes law in the United States of America.
President Barack Obama's signature achievement, Obamacare, provided health care to millions.
We are done. Our God is marching on.
But it also gave rise to the Tea Party. Conservative backlash to Mr. Obama took down Nancy Pelosi, the first female Speaker of the House. Although Mr. Obama finally brought 9/11 mastermind Osama bin Laden to justice, he soon faced the lowest low of his presidency, the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. 6 educators and 20 children dead.
Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old.
Calls for gun control failed, and 3 years later, a white gunman prayed with 9 black parishioners in Charleston, South Carolina, then shot them dead.
Amazing.
Grief yielded to anguished song.
Sing praise.
Every city, every town.
Protests led to the Black Lives Matter demonstrations that provided a background to the presidential election. The 2016 campaign was like no other in modern history. Loud, angry, divisive, and in its wake, wave after wave of disruption.
The fake news, they're all back there.
Donald Trump blistered the airwaves and social media.
Jeb is so wrong.
Knocking over experienced Republican rivals like bowling pins. And then...
You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the...
And yet, victory.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
President Trump has been every bit as disruptive as candidate Trump. His response to the investigation into Russian election interference? Fire the FBI director. Although Mr. Trump delivered a massive tax cut to Supreme Court justices and dozens of federal judges, last year an unsettled electorate handed the House back to the Democrats and the Speaker's gavel back to Nancy Pelosi. Despite her misgivings, the Ukraine scandal drove Pelosi to seek the president's removal.
It's a hoax. It's a big fat hoax.
Mr. Trump's legacy? A re-election answer looms in the first year of our new decade.
Coming up after a break, we'll take you live to New York City's Times Square as we count down to 2020. You're streaming CBSN, CBS News, always on. Welcome back to CBSN's special New Year's Eve coverage, Countdown to 2020. We are about a half hour away from midnight here on the East Coast. Hillary Lane is in Times Square. Hillary, what's the latest?
Elaine, you could feel the excitement here in Times Square growing as we inch closer and closer to 2020, and security here remains tight. Even though the NYPD says there is no credible threat to Times Square, there are still thousands of police officers on the ground, and for the first time, drones in the air. Everyone in Times Square has gone through multiple layers of security. There are over 1 million revelers getting ready to ring in the new year. Many have been on their feet for hours, some even since the early hours of the morning. We spoke to two sisters. They road tripped here together from Los Angeles. They said coming to watch the ball drop was something on their bucket list. They just had to do it, but they've been standing since 1 a.m. and they are ready for midnight to be here. They're ready to celebrate. Of course, the big star of the show is that Waterford ball that will drop at midnight. It's over 12,000 pounds, 12 feet wide, really signifying all of the celebration that we'll see here in Times Square in just a little while. And the NYPD says it takes about a year to plan out all of the security for an event like this. So as soon as that ball drops, they'll start planning for 2020. Live at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square, Hillary Lane. Elaine, back over to you.
As we count down to midnight, we're also looking back on the biggest stories of 2019. CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook reports on the biggest health stories of the year, starting with a mysterious illness that impacted teens across the country.
More than 2,400 people were hospitalized with lung injuries in an ongoing outbreak associated with vaping in the U.S. More than 50 people died.
I didn't think it could be that bad, and it really almost killed me.
Federal health officials linked the chemical vitamin E acetate to the outbreak, but say there might be more than one cause. More than 1,200 cases of measles were reported, the largest number since 1992. Most cases were linked to outbreaks in New York.
The outbreaks in New York are being fueled by myths and misinformation that is leading people to not get vaccinated.
2018-2019 flu season was the longest in a decade. Federal health officials say 2 types of viruses surfaced at different times, extending the season. An E. coli outbreak prompted a CDC warning on romaine lettuce from the Salinas, California region.
The E. coli can cause an intestinal illness, prominently diarrhea, but also abdominal cramps and just feeling very, very poorly.
The makers of Zantac recalled the popular heartburn drug. Generic versions were also pulled. The FDA is investigating after tests showed small amounts of a probable carcinogen. With more than 130 people dying every day in the U.S. from opioid overdoses, federal health officials announced more than $1.8 billion in funding to states to fight the crisis. A CDC report showed the HPV vaccine could prevent about 92% of cancers caused by the human papillomavirus, and research published in Pediatrics backed up the vaccine's safety. Dozens of cases of Eastern equine encephalitis, or EEE, were reported, making it the worst season since the CDC began monitoring for the mosquito-borne disease. 15 people died. The FDA approved the first drug for women with postpartum depression. The one-time intravenous treatment requires a 3-night hospital stay.
I noticed a huge difference. Those intrusive thoughts I told you about were gone, and they never came back.
An FDA advisory panel recommended the first treatment for food allergies. Research shows the oral immunotherapy helped 67% of children and teens with severe peanut allergy tolerate the equivalent of about 2 peanuts. And the FDA issued their strongest warning on some popular sleep medications, requiring a black box label on medications including Ambien, Lunesta, and Sonata to alert patients to potentially dangerous behaviors. That's a look at the year's top health stories. Dr. John LaPook, CBS News.
2019 gave us record-breaking box office numbers, along with a few celebrity scandals. Here's Chris Martinez with a look at some of the top entertainment stories of the year.
2019 saw celebrities entangled in a nationwide college admissions scandal. Actresses Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman were among dozens of parents charged with committing bribery and fraud to get their kids admitted to top universities. Huffman pled guilty and spent nearly 2 weeks in prison. Robert R. Kelly spent much of the year in court after a Lifetime documentary called Surviving R. Kelly led to a number of charges of criminal sexual abuse against the singer. And Empire star Jussie Smollett was charged with filing a false police report after investigators said he lied about a hate crime assault. The charges were later dismissed. Fans mourned the loss of several celebrities in 2019, including rapper Nipsey Hussle, who was murdered outside a clothing shop he owned in Los Angeles. 90210 star Luke Perry passed away after suffering a stroke. And trailblazing actress Diane Carroll succumbed to complications from breast cancer at age 84.
What is survival of the fittest? You are right.
On TV, fans cheered as James Holzhauer won over $2 million in an epic 32-game winning streak on Jeopardy! The nation also learned the show's beloved host, Alex Trebek, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. At the box office, several films shattered records. Marvel Studios' Avengers Endgame dethroned Avatar to become the highest-grossing film of all time.
We do this together, okay?
Audiences warmly welcomed Disney's Frozen 2, giving it the biggest opening of all time for an animated film. And controversy over its violent content didn't stop moviegoers from making Joker the highest-grossing R-rated movie ever.
I'm good.
At the Oscars, Green Book took home Best Picture. Casey Musgrave's Golden Hour took home the Grammy for Album of the Year, while Apple Music named Billie Eilish 2019's Global Artist of the Year. And Game of Thrones, which wrapped up its final season, took home the Emmy for Outstanding Drama Series. That's your year in entertainment. Chris Martinez, CBS News, Los Angeles.
From rising tensions to the prospect of peace, it's been a defining decade in Asia. Barry Peterson takes a look back.
Here in the Far East, the story of this decade is the story of two men who define not just the region, but a growing and strengthening challenge to the United States.
First, China's President Xi Jinping. His big spending on the military included deploying just this month the very first Chinese-built aircraft carrier, a bid to confront the U.S. for control of the region. But closer to home, Xi has not been able to control this year's pro-democracy riots in Hong Kong. Once the jewel of Asia, the city is now better known for tear gas and street violence with no end in sight. Asia's other strongman, North Korea's Kim Jong-un, took power when his father died in 2011. The faces of his family dynasty are everywhere. To solidify his power, Kim is making life better for an emerging middle class. Department stores have goods. And Pyongyang has a new amusement park.
Rocket Man.
Even President Trump's name-calling seems to have raised Kim's status.
Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago.
2 nuclear summits followed.
My friend.
As did a remarkable photo op when Trump became the first sitting American president to step into North Korea.
Stepping across that line was a great honor. A lot of progress has been made.
But months after that photo op, economic sanctions are still in place. And Kim just told his generals to accelerate military development, and that could mean new nuclear weapons or ballistic missile tests. This decade began with a nuclear horror, explosions at a Japanese nuclear power plant after flooding from an earthquake-triggered tsunami. It ends under a different sort of nuclear cloud that threatens the United States and the world.
We're going to take a quick break, but before we go, Spotify looked at the top music you streamed this year and throughout the decade.
Wherever we have to go.
We've just flown along the coastline.
Whatever we have to do.
The White police were throwing the first rounds of tear gas.
Every evening we are focused.
This is the main highway to the hardest hit areas.
On finding and telling the truth.
How does that hamper or hurt our national security?
Even among the ashes, you can see the signs of deforestation.
And earning your trust.
You traveled the whole way with your son?
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
For over a century, people have flocked to New York City's Times Square to see its famous New Year's Eve celebration. The main attraction is the iconic ball, which first debuted in 1907. It's part of a centuries-old tradition, signaling the passage of time. The first ball was made of iron and wood and covered with 125-watt light bulbs. It weighed 700 pounds. Now it's made up of about 3,000 Waterford crystal triangles that are installed on an aluminum frame. It measures 12 feet in diameter and weighs nearly 12,000 pounds. It's not just the end of the year, but the beginning of a new decade. Let's take a look back at the legacy of the 2010s, a decade of political and technological change. Here's 5 journalists and experts on how they think the decade will be remembered.
The 2010s really was the decade where we flipped the table on the status quo.
Don't believe me, just watch.
A truly magical and revolutionary product today.
We can change the world.
We started this decade with Barack Obama.
So help you God?
So help me God. In many ways, where we're at started with Barack Obama because the American voters wanted something totally different, and it just became more and more different throughout the decade.
I came in like a wrecking ball. We will make America great again.
When you look back at the 2010s, I don't know how you don't remember Donald Trump.
We are building a wall.
It's all a hoax.
He is a sick puppy.
He's the greatest show on earth, whether you like it or not. And 2010 was about reality TV shows.
I'm not buying a pair of shoes. I bought her a career.
Serious?
I don't give a about any of you. You're white trash.
And we ended the decade with a reality TV show.
Get her out of here.
We started the decade with an economic crisis, and we finished it with an existential crisis. Everything that happened in the 2010s was rooted in this enormously disruptive and frightening collapse of the economy.
This was the Dow's worst one-day point drop.
The Dow Jones average dropping 213 points.
It ripped apart a bunch of institutions and norms, and now we're kind of asking ourselves, what kind of a world do we want?
Stop the violence! Stop the rape!
The 2010s will be remembered as the decade when the Me Too movement went global.
You hear my voice?
It felt like all of the sudden this issue, which had a history of lack of accountability, suddenly had a new sense that there could be consequences for this kind of behavior.
Time is up. We are no longer going to be harassed.
I'm responsible for what happens here.
The moment that might have defined the arc of the 2010s in tech is Mark Zuckerberg testifying after the Cambridge Analytica scandal.
And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry.
So when we go from a moment of innovation, Amazon, Alexa, how's traffic? Uber, Instagram, to real reckoning about the consequences of tech.
Stop apologizing and let's make the change.
Your user agreement sucks.
What's extraordinary about some of these hashtag movements is that they weren't just in name only. People actually marched.
Love Trump's hate!
People went out into the streets.
I can't breathe! Hands up! Don't shoot!
People protested, did walkouts.
Climate action! When do we want it? Now!
I think about when I was first getting into politics when I was in my early teens. And I felt like as a young person, you were sort of meant to be patted on the head and isn't this nice? And I feel like now there's really a space.
The world is waking up. And change is coming whether you like it or not.
All you bad folks, you must go.
And once again, we witness history unfold. The Emmy goes to Billy Porter.
This whole decade of transformation, especially in entertainment and film, is that while we still have a very long way to go, there's so much that's promising.
Mahershala Ali became the first Muslim actor to win an Academy Award.
Kathryn Bigelow, the first woman to win Best Director.
Laverne Cox, the first openly transgender woman ever nominated for an acting Emmy.
You need some of these. I made my own.
couture.
Let me live that fantasy.
I don't think that you can understate the impact of seeing some of these firsts coming in entertainment. You have Ava DuVernay running her own studio, headlining movies like Crazy Rich Asians. And then you've got Black Panther. It actually moved the needle on what it meant to have a predominantly black cast in the Marvel universe.
Wakanda forever! Wakanda forever!
Hamilton is a breathtaking body of work.
Who do you think you are? Gary Antoinette?
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
The decade in TV was just, explosive.
Because we can stream them whenever we want, we're able to sort of consume much more complex culture whenever we want on our own time. And it led to the creation of amazing television.
I don't know how obvious that is.
Nothing was about to happen until something happened.
Winter is coming.
My daddy, Alabama, mama, Louisiana.
This was the decade that Queen Bee, Beyonce, ascended to her throne. When you think about the album Lemonade, for example, which was all about Black pride and self-worth, her performance at Coachella was so amazing that they renamed it Baychella. She ran away with the decade heads down.
That's down the right field line into the corner.
The sports moment of the decade absolutely has to be the Washington Nationals winning the World Series.
3-2. Here it is! The Washington Nationals are world champions.
I'm a huge Nationals fan, so I'm a little bit biased, but it was just a great, uplifting story at a time that America needed it more than ever before.
The whole ballpark is doing this.
Terrible song, but a great rallying cry. Can you do it for us now?
Isn't that it?
This is America. Don't catch you slipping now.
I can't tell you what the 2020s will be defined by, but I can tell you this. We live in an era where it just feels like every bill is coming due at once. Big debates about health care.
Under Joe's plan, essentially, we retain the status quo.
That's not true.
No, it is exactly true.
About the environment, when I think basically nobody thinks that the system is really fair anymore. So it just feels like we're living not only through one reckoning, but a kind of cascade of reckonings.
I'm really excited about space exploration.
The future of space exploration is something really exciting to look forward to in the 2020s.
I really am kind of curious what's going to happen with that Tesla truck. I think it looks like something out of the Jetsons.
Well, here we go again. This is a great time to be alive, and the next decade is going to be crazy.
It's almost midnight on the East Coast, so let's take you live now to New York City's Times Square as we await the ball drop. As we go ahead and listen in from all of us at CBSN, thanks for watching, have a happy new year, and we'll see you in 2020.
Joined by their students, Daniel Soto, Van Troy Ulloa, Ricardo Herrera, and Merling Lantigua. And up next, just before midnight, we have our final performance of the evening, when ex-ambassadors bring the world together with their rendition of John Lennon's Imagine.
All right, cool. Can I just stay up on the stage?
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of men. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer. Oh, I'm not the only one. And I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one. Happy New Year.
part of it. New York, New York, these vagabond shoes are longing to stray right through the very heart of it. New York, New York, I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep and find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. These little towns are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. New York, I want to wake up in a city that never sleeps and find I'm a number one, top of the list, king of the hill, a number one. These little town blues are melting away. I'm gonna make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, I'm gonna make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New But now wait a minute, I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good. Yes, he did. Heavy brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this. America, I love you, America. You see, my God, he done shed his grace on thee. You ought to love him for it, 'cause he crowned my good. He told me he would. Every brotherhood from sea to for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Thank you.
U.S. embassy under attack. Protesters in Iraq stormed the compound in Baghdad, chanting "Death to America." How the White House is responding. Communities in healing, an outpouring of support in New York and Texas after a pair of attacks on worshipers over the weekend. Plus,
these new revelations are a game changer.
Democrats seize on new reporting about the decision to withhold aid to Ukraine. Will it impact the president's impeachment defense? Countdown to 2020. Here in New York, we're just hours away from ringing in the new year. But for some, the party has already started. We'll be bringing you live celebrations from around the globe throughout the day. CBSN starts now. Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. We begin with that violent attack on the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Dozens of protesters stormed the compound in Baghdad seeking to break in. U.S. guards had to fire tear gas to try to keep the crowd away. At this hour, all U.S. personnel are safe and the situation is now stable. The president and the Secretary of State say Iran is behind the unrest. CBS News foreign correspondent Holly Williams has the latest on the violence and what sparked it.
Thousands of protesters were somehow able to get past Iraqi security forces into the fortified Green Zone and reach the U.S. Embassy compound. They vented their anger with fires and with rocks. They pulled down signs, smashed a security booth, and broke into an embassy reception area. "Death to America," they shouted, and America is the greatest devil. The embassy is a place of plotting against Iraq, said militia leader Qais al-Hazali. This place is where all operations of sabotage have been run. Embassy guards reportedly fired tear gas, and American helicopters fired flares. These Marines have been sent to reinforce the embassy, but US personnel are safe and there are no evacuation plans. The violence was a response to American airstrikes on Sunday, targeting a militia group in Iraq that's backed by Iran. The US strikes killed at least 25 militia fighters and were an act of retaliation for the killing of a US citizen, an American contractor working on an Iraqi military base who died in a rocket attack last week. The US airstrikes have fueled anti-American fervour, which is never far from the surface. And the protests show the political power wielded by militia groups backed by Iran. With Iran and the US vying for influence in Iraq and tensions high, the fear is a full-blown proxy war fought in a country already steeped in blood.
CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett spoke with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about the attack on the embassy in Iraq. Here's the interview.
What is the situation at the embassy right now?
So the embassy is being monitored. It's safe. The actions that we took today were prudent in light of the Iranian-backed militias that were there, that came at our embassy. Under President Trump's direction, our team worked together today to quickly, decisively, prudently take the appropriate responses to keep our American people safe.
How close were we to either evacuating any part of the embassy or repelling the protesters or militants by force?
So we never contemplated evacuating the facility today. Our charge on the ground, Brian McFeeters, did great work. He was always confident that we had the resources, we had the tools, we had the security at the right level, and that he had the attention of the entire United States government to protect American interests there today. And the work that we did when Iranian-backed protesters, designated terrorists in some cases, approached our facility, gave him the confidence he needed to make sure he was keeping his people safe. And then as the day moved on, we were able to get more resources into the facility to provide even greater security. This is a serious situation. It is ongoing. There are still folks at the edges of our compound, but the American people should know that President Trump and our team are working diligently to make sure that we keep this facility secure.
To what degree were we caught off guard?
No, we've known for a long time that there was this risk. It's been 40 years that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been at this, and we've watched them continue to take actions. We saw them take actions that killed an American in Iraq just this past week. We saw the United States act decisively to respond to that in a way to signal to them that we would do precisely what I've said, precisely what President Trump said we would do when American interests and American lives were at stake.
Language is important. Are these protesters, militants, or something else?
Well, so, there were actually protests today, but they weren't at our facility. The protests were over in Tahrir Square. These were the Iraqi people, as they have been protesting for months against the corrupt leaders inside of their country. They just want a sovereign, free, independent Iraq. Today, the people that came to our embassy are people like Muhandis and Haidar al-Mari, people that we've known for a long time that are
Some
U.S.
people that used to be in custody.
that were people who are designated terrorists who showed up at this facility while these activities were taking place and watched these actions take place, standing at the front gates to our embassy.
So are they militants, terrorists, or what?
There's a mix of each, but make no mistake about it, this was directed by the Iranian leadership, and many of these people are designated terrorists.
It appears they went through several checkpoints. To what degree did the Iraqi government let us down, letting them get as close as they got to the compound of the embassy?
So early this morning, I made clear when I spoke with the Iraqi leadership, President Abdel-Mahdi and our Prime Minister Abdel-Mahdi and President Barham Saleh, that the Iraqis had the responsibility to keep our facility safe.
Did they live up to that?
They've responded. They brought counterterrorism forces to bear. We reminded them throughout the day of their continued responsibility, and we told them where we thought there was risk and things weren't happening the way we needed it to happen. And so we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to talk to them to make sure that the security, the commitments that they made to me, and President Trump spoke with Prime Minister Abdel-Mahdi today as well, to make sure they continue to live up to their obligation to help keep our facility safe.
To the degree you can, Mr. Secretary, describe for our audience the new, fresh commitments you received from the Iraqi government as this situation continues.
So they were just continuing a set of commitments. They understand that they have a responsibility
to
protect foreign embassies, to keep the embassies and our diplomats and the person serving at their request inside of their country, to keep them safe. They have that responsibility. They acknowledge that responsibility. And today we watched as they worked to deliver that effectively.
Does that mean we will not see a repeat of this tomorrow, the next day, or the next day?
It's a serious situation. We're watching. We'll make sure that we're doing all the things that we need to do, and we'll continue to ask the Iraqi government to do the things that they have a responsibility to do.
The militias claim that the airstrikes you mentioned a moment ago killed civilians, and that precipitated some of the protests today. To what degree do you believe that to be true?
The response that we took was both lawful and appropriate.
No, that drove them to protest and come toward the embassy.
So
their outrage over that.
This is what I'm speaking to. The response that we made, the actions that we took now a couple days back, was in direct response to these same people, Kataib Hezbollah, these same people who took actions against us that resulted in the loss of life in an American citizen. And President Trump has made clear, when that happens, we're going to respond. And we did. We took responses against Kataib Hezbollah. We took response against those who were responsible for perpetrating this attack. And make no mistake about it, these are Iranian-sponsored, Iranian-backed, Iranian-coordinated attacks on American interests. And we've made clear this is not acceptable.
This sounds, Mr. Secretary, like a low-level proxy war. Are we, and should the American people contemplate being on a war footing in 2020 where Iran is concerned?
This is state-sponsored terror. This is Iranian-backed terrorism that took place that threatened American interests. And what this administration has consistently done when we came in, we inherited an Iran policy that was fundamentally different. It was underwriting these very Iranian actors. It was allowing money to flow into Iran. It created a pathway through the Iran nuclear deal that would have guaranteed a pathway to a nuclear weapon. We've taken a fundamentally different approach. We have starved them of resources. We've denied them access. We've put pressure on the Iranian leadership. And I think you see that, whether it's the people protesting in Beirut. Just, they don't want any part of Iran there. They don't want to be part of Lebanon Hezbollah. You see the people protesting in Iraq. They don't want the Iranians meddling. We want Iraqi sovereignty. These Iranian-backed militias want kleptocracy. They want to continue the corruption that has beguiled and made the Iraqi people suffer so much. The work that this administration has done to push back against the Islamic Republic of Iran is incredibly important, and it's a continued work in progress.
Let me move you to North Korea, because just before you came in, Mr. Secretary, a couple of things were announced by the state media in North Korea. One, that according to Kim Jong-un and the state media, the world will, quote, witness a new strategic weapon to be possessed by the DPRK, meaning North Korea, in the near future, and that North Korea is ending its moratorium on nuclear and ballistic missile testing. Have you ever been more concerned about the future of U.S.-North Korean relations than you are right now?
I was more concerned about it when this administration took office. We were in a place where it was very likely that we would have ended up in a war with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea. President Trump has taken an approach where we've tried to develop a diplomatic pathway. We hope that the North Koreans will reconsider, that they'll continue down that pathway. It's important. It's the right solution. We want peace, not confrontation. And I've seen this reporting. We'll need to see precisely what all Chairman Kim said in these remarks. But we want to continue to leave open the possibility that a leader of North Korea will make a choice that's the best choice for both himself and for his people.
These two announcements do not alarm you?
I'm concerned about a lot of things every day, Major.
Right, but I mean,
I'll be honest. I saw this as like
a turn away from where you were, where the U.S. and North Korea were.
If Chairman Kim has reneged on the commitments he made to President Trump, that is deeply disappointing. I was there when Chairman Kim made the commitment that said he would not engage in intercontinental missiles or test firing of their nuclear weapons, testing their nuclear weapon systems. He made those commitments to President Trump in exchange for President Trump agreeing not to conduct large-scale military exercises. We've lived up to our commitments. We continue to hold out hope that he'll live up to his as well.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Major.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, sir.
CBS News national security correspondent David Martin joins me now by phone. David, there have been questions about how these protesters were able to get to the embassy. Who is actually responsible for securing that area?
Well, the outer perimeter is the responsibility of Iraqi security forces. And I think the best thing you can say about what the Iraqi security forces did in response to this demonstration is that they were slow to respond. You could probably go a little further and say they sat on their hands and allowed these protesters to get past the Iraqi checkpoints and up to the actual perimeter of the U.S. Embassy, where they started encountering U.S. Embassy guards. And this is undoubtedly an expression of Iraqi displeasure with the strike last Sunday on these Iranian-backed Shiite militias at one of their bases in western Iraq and Syria and eastern Syria. These Shia militias are technically part of the Iraqi security forces. They don't necessarily follow orders given to them by the Iraqi security forces, but they are under the umbrella of the Iraqi security forces. And so when the U.S. decided to retaliate against the Shia militia that it thought was responsible for the rocket attack, which killed the American contractor last week, the U.S.